The blue waters of Valari Prime sparkled under twin suns as massive ships appeared in the sky. But these were not friendly visitors. The dark metal hulls of the Thanker Empire cast shadows over the peaceful ocean cities below. Elder Reef Singer floated in the emergency council chamber, his translucent fins trembling with fear. Around him, other Valari leaders whispered in their musical language, their voices filled with panic. Through the crystal walls, they could see Thankor warships, destroying their orbital stations one by one. "Send the message," Reef Singer said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Send it to every star system in the galaxy. Someone must help us." The communication officer pressed her webbed hands against the control panel. The distress signal went out across space, carrying the desperate words of a dying civilization. "This is Valari Prime. We are under attack. Our people are peaceful. We have no weapons. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. We need sanctuary. We are not warriors. We only want to live." The message traveled through hyperspace, reaching thousands of worlds. Most ignored it. War was common in the galaxy, and few species wanted to get involved in someone else's fight. But on a blue-green world called Earth, someone was listening. Admiral Deho stood in the command center of Terra Station, Earth's main military base in orbit. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his face from many battles. His dark eyes showed no emotion as he listened to the alien message for the third time. "Sir, should we forward this to the diplomatic corps?" asked his aide, a young officer named Jae-wook. Deho shook his head slowly. "No, this is a military matter now." He turned to face the large screen showing star charts. "Commander Ye-jin, what do we know about these Thankor?" Ye-jin stepped forward, her uniform crisp and clean. She was known for her sharp mind and cold logic. "The Thankor Empire has been expanding for 50 years. They attack weak civilizations, take their resources, and enslave survivors. They have never fought a real military force. And the Valari? Ocean dwellers. No military. They make food and medicine, completely defenseless." Yejin pulled up images of the blue aliens on the main screen. They looked fragile, almost like living water themselves. Deho nodded. Around the command center, other officers watched and waited. They all knew what was coming. Earth did not send rescue ships filled with doctors and food. Earth sent warships, filled with soldiers. "Captain Taemin, is the Soul's Wrath ready for combat?" Deho asked. A broad-shouldered man in a captain's uniform saluted. "Yes, sir. All weapons loaded. Crew at full strength. We can launch in 6 hours." "Make it 4 hours." Deho turned to address the entire room. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation. Innocent aliens are being slaughtered by bullies. This will not stand." The officers around the room straightened. They had heard this tone before. Admiral Deho was planning war. "Sir," said Lieutenant Minji from the intelligence desk, "the Valari are asking for sanctuary, not military intervention. Maybe we should offer them refugee status instead of engaging the Thankor." Deho's cold smile made several officers step back. "Lieutenant, when someone threatens innocent people in our galaxy, we do not run away. We do not hide. We solve the problem permanently." In the depths of space, the Thankor fleet continued its assault on Valari Prime. Their ships were large and brutal, designed to scare enemies into surrender. The Thankor themselves were reptilian creatures, 7 feet tall with claws and scales. They believed strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. Fleet Master Veltak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching explosions bloom across the ocean world below. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "The fish people are crying for help," he hissed to his officers. "But no one will come. No one ever comes." His communications officer looked up from his station. "Master, we are detecting hyperspace signatures. Multiple ships approaching." Veltak laughed. Sound like grinding metal. Refugees fleeing the sector, no doubt. Or perhaps some fools think they can negotiate with us." He turned to look at the tactical display. "How many ships?" 12, Master. Military configuration." The laughter died in Veltak's throat. 12 military ships was a serious fleet. What? Species? The communications officer's scales paled. "Unknown configuration, Master. The ships, they look different from anything in our databases." On Earth, final preparations were underway. The human fleet assembled in formation beyond the moon. 12 ships of war, each one designed by humans who had learned to fight in the depths of space. The vessels were gray and angular, built for function rather than beauty. They carried no bright colors or proud banners. They were tools of war, nothing more. Admiral Deho stood on the bridge of the Busan Rising, his flagship. Through the viewports, he could see the other ships of his fleet. The heavy cruiser Inchin's Edge, commanded by Captain Sora. The Assault. Carrier Gwangju's Hammer under Captain Yoon Suk. And the mighty dreadnought Soul's Wrath with Captain Taemin at the helm. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Commander Ye Jin. "Excellent. Communications Officer Sun Woo, have you prepared the message for the Thankor?" Sun Woo, a quiet man with steady hands, nodded. "Yes, sir. Standard warning to cease hostile actions and withdraw." "Good. Send it when we arrive. Give them one chance to leave peacefully." Daeho's voice was calm, but everyone on the bridge knew. He hoped they would refuse. The fleet engaged their hyperspace drives and vanished from Earth's solar system. Behind them, automated defense platforms powered up and began scanning space for threats. Earth's military never left their home world undefended. On Valari Prime, Reef Singer received reports from the few orbital sensors that still worked. "Elder, we detect ships approaching. 12 vessels of unknown design." Hope flickered in Reef Singer's large eyes. "Response to our distress call?" "Unknown, Elder. The ships do not match any known peaceful configuration. In the Thankor fleet, alarms began to sound. The unknown ships had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system and were moving toward them at high speed. They were not slowing down or requesting communication. "Master," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the unknown fleet." Veltak straightened. "Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen. The alien had pale skin and dark hair, with cold eyes that seemed to look right through the Thankor commander. When he spoke, his voice was calm and terrible. "Thankor Fleet, this is Admiral Deho of the Terran Defense Force. You are ordered to cease all hostile actions against the Valari people and withdraw from this system immediately. You have 30 minutes to comply." Veltak stared at the image for a moment, then burst into laughter. "Terran? Never heard of you, mammal. This system belongs to the Thankor Empire now. Leave or be destroyed." The human's expression did not change. "You have chosen poorly." The transmission ended. On the bridge of the Busan Rising, Admiral Deho turned to his officers. His face showed no anger, no excitement, only cold purpose. "All ships, combat formation. Prepare to engage." Show them what humans do to bullies. The Valari had sent a cry for help into the dark. They had hoped for compassion, for mercy, for someone to save them from their nightmare. They were about to learn that sometimes, when you call into the darkness, something worse than your nightmares answers back. But sometimes, that is exactly what you need. The 30 minutes passed like hours. In the depths of space between worlds, 12 human warships moved in perfect formation toward the Valari system. Admiral Deho stood motionless on his bridge, watching the tactical display as his fleet approached the enemy. "Sir, we are detecting movement in the Thankor fleet," reported Commander Yejin. Her fingers danced over her control panel, gathering information about their targets. They are not withdrawing. Instead, they appear to be forming a battle line. Deho nodded slowly. He had expected this. In his 40 years of military service, he had learned that bullies never back down when faced with a fair fight. They only understood one language, and he was fluent in it. "Lieutenant Minji, what is our tactical assessment?" he asked. Minji looked up from her station. She was young for an intelligence officer, but her mind was sharp as a blade. "The Thankor have 15 ships, sir, all larger than ours. Their technology appears focused on brute force rather than precision. Thick armor, heavy weapons, but slow and clumsy." "Like most bullies," Deho said quietly. "They rely on fear and overwhelming power because they have never learned to actually fight." Engineer J. Wook stepped forward from his position at the power management station. "All ships report full combat readiness, Admiral. Reactors are running at 95% efficiency. Kinetic weapons are loaded and charged." Deho smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "Excellent. Captain Taemin, is Soul's Wrath prepared for close combat?" On the main screen, Taemin's scarred face appeared. Behind him, his bridge crew worked with calm efficiency. "Soul's Wrath is ready, sir. My crew has been training for this their whole lives." "And Captain Sora?" Another window opened, showing a woman with short black hair and cold eyes. "Incheon's Edge stands ready, Admiral. My destroyers will screen the heavy units and pick off stragglers." Finally, Captain Yoon Suk appeared on screen. She commanded the assault carrier, the ship that would secure any territory they captured. "Gwangju's hammer is prepared for extended operations, sir. My Marines are eager to show these aliens what human soldiers can do." Deho looked at each of his captains in turn. These were his best officers, veterans of the wars against the hegemony. They had learned to fight in the cold depths of space, where one mistake meant death for everyone aboard. They were not just soldiers, they were apex predators from a world that had tried to kill them every day for millions of years. "Very well," Deho said. "All ships, increase to battle speed. We will hit them hard and fast before they can organize a proper defense." The human fleet accelerated. Their ships were smaller than the Thankor vessels, but they moved like hunting animals, quick and deadly. Each ship had been designed by humans who understood that in space, speed and precision mattered more than size. In the Thankor fleet, confusion was spreading. Fleetmaster Veltok paced his bridge, his claws clicking on the metal floor. "How many ships did you say?" 12, Master, his tactical officer replied nervously. "But they are accelerating far beyond normal safety limits. Their power signatures suggest they are pushing their reactors past recommended parameters." Veltok hissed in annoyance. "Fools! They will damage their own ships with such reckless behavior." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their lead vessel. Show them the power of Thankor war machines. The largest Thankor ship fired its main gun, a massive energy beam that could melt through meters of armor. The beam lanced out across space, striking empty darkness where the human ship had been a split second before. On the bridge of the Busan Rising, Ye-jin reported calmly, "Enemy has fired. Predictive algorithms worked perfectly. We were already moving to avoid their targeting solution." Dae-ho nodded. Humans had been fighting in space for 300 years. They had learned to read enemy intentions from the smallest changes in position and power output. All ships, begin evasive maneuvers. Show them how Earth teaches its children to dance. The human fleet scattered into a complex pattern that looked random, but was actually carefully planned. Each ship moved in ways that made targeting impossible, while keeping their own weapons aimed at the enemy. It was like watching a pack of wolves circle their prey. Lieutenant Min-ji studied the enemy formation with professional interest. "Sir, the Thankor are trying to match our maneuvers, but their ships are too large and slow. They are designed for fighting stationary targets, not mobile opponents." "Typical," Dae-ho said. "They have been bullying defenseless civilians for so long. They have forgotten how to fight real soldiers." The range continued to close. On Valari Prime below, the blue-skinned aliens watched in wonder and terror as the two fleets prepared to clash. They had never seen a space battle before. Their people were peaceful, dedicated to art and science and the cultivation of life in their vast oceans. Reef Singer floated in his council chamber, surrounded by his advisors. "The new ships move like living things," he whispered. "Are they also warriors like the Thankor?" "Unknown, Elder," replied his military advisor, though the Valari had no real military to speak of. "But they do not move like the Thankor. The Thankor lumber forward like great beasts. These new ships flow like the currents of the deep ocean. Range to target 2 million kilometers, reported Ye-jin. "Entering effective engagement range for our kinetic weapons." Dae-ho straightened in his command chair. Around the bridge, his officers prepared for battle with the calm efficiency of professionals. There was no shouting, no dramatic speeches. This was their job, and they were very good at it. "Captain Taemin, you may fire when ready." The Souls. Wrath was a dreadnought, the most powerful ship in the human fleet. Its main guns fired solid projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. When these rounds hit a target, they released energy equivalent to nuclear weapons. The dreadnought fired 6 projectiles, each one a cylinder of dense metal the size of a small building, raced across space faster than most ships could track. The tanker vessel they targeted had thick armor designed to stop energy weapons. It was not designed to stop kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The rounds struck the tanker cruiser along its length. The first projectile punched through the armor like it was paper. The second and third rounds followed the same path, widening the hole. The fourth, fifth, and sixth rounds struck vital systems deep inside the ship. The cruiser exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the entire system. On the Thankor flagship, alarms screamed. Fleetmaster Veltok stared at the expanding cloud of debris that had been one of his best ships. "Impossible," he hissed. "No weapon can penetrate our armor like that." His weapons officer looked up with wide, frightened eyes. "Master, those projectiles were moving at nearly 30% light speed. At that velocity, even a small mass carries enormous energy." Veltak's scales began to pale. He was beginning to understand that these humans were not like the peaceful species his empire usually attacked. "All ships Concentrate fire on their largest vessel. Destroy it before it can fire again." But the humans were not sitting still. Even as the Thankor fleet tried to target the Soul's Wrath, the other human ships were moving into attack positions. Captain Sora's destroyers raced forward like hunting hounds, their smaller guns firing constantly to disrupt Thankor targeting systems. "Sir, the enemy is attempting to concentrate fire on Soul's Wrath," reported Sunwoo from communications. "Expected," Daeho replied. "Captain Sora, begin your attack run. Show them why humans evolved pack hunting." The destroyers split into two, groups approaching the Thankor fleet from different angles. Their smaller size let them accelerate faster and change direction more quickly than the enemy could follow. They fired as they moved, their weapons sending streams of projectiles into the Thankor formation. The Thankor tried to track the fast-moving human ships, but their heavy weapons could not turn quickly enough. It was like trying to swat flies with a hammer. Every time they aimed at one destroyer, two more attacked from a different direction. "Multiple hits on enemy vessels," reported Minji. "Their armor is holding, but we are disrupting their formation and damaging their sensor arrays." Daeho watched the battle develop with satisfaction. This was how humans fought, not with brute force, but with intelligence and coordination. Each ship in his fleet had a role to play, and they played it perfectly. "Captain Yoon-suk, prepare your Marines for boarding actions. I suspect some of these Thankor ships will survive our initial assault, and we will need prisoners for questioning." Yoon-suk's grim smile appeared on the screen. "My Marines are ready, sir. We have been practicing zero-gravity combat for months." The battle was just beginning, but already the outcome was becoming clear. The Thankor had expected to face defenseless refugees or diplomatic vessels carrying relief supplies. Instead, they had awakened something that had been forged in the depths of space and tempered by centuries of warfare. They had called forth the children of Earth, and Earth's children were very, very good at solving problems permanently. The human fleet spread across space like a net closing around its prey. Admiral Daeho watched the tactical display as his ships moved into final attack positions. The Thankor fleet was beginning to realize they were not dealing with typical galactic peacekeepers. "Sir, we are receiving communications from the Valari surface," reported Sunwoo from his station. "They are asking about our intentions and requesting to speak with our diplomatic representatives." Daeho did not take his eyes off the tactical display. "Tell them we are busy at the moment. We will speak with them after we finish cleaning up their system." Commander Ye-jin looked up from her analysis station. "Admiral, I am detecting interesting patterns in Thankor fleet movements. They are pulling back from the planet and forming a defensive sphere around their flagship." "Good," Daeho said quietly. "They are starting to think like prey instead of predators. That will make this easier." On the surface of Valari Prime, Reef Singer and his council watched the battle through their few remaining orbital sensors. The new ships moved unlike anything they had ever seen. Where Thankor vessels were large and clumsy, these human ships flowed through space like schools of fish, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. "Elder," said the communications officer, her voice trembling. "The human admiral says they are too busy to speak with us right now." Reef Singer's large eyes widened. In galactic society, diplomatic contact was always the first priority. No civilized species would ignore communication requests during a crisis. "What manner of beings are these?" "I do not know, Elder, but they fight like nothing I have ever seen." In the Thankor fleet, panic was beginning to spread. Fleetmaster Veltuk stood on his bridge, watching human destroyers dart between his ships like angry insects. Every time his gunners tried to target one, it would disappear behind another vessel or change direction so quickly that their heavy weapons could not follow. "Master," his tactical officer called out, "we have lost another cruiser. The humans are targeting our weapon systems with surgical precision." Veltak hissed in frustration. "How is this possible? Our ships are 3 times larger than theirs. Our guns should be able to destroy them easily." "Size means nothing if you cannot hit your target, Master. These humans fight like they were born in space." The fleet master turned to his communications officer. "Contact the human commander. Tell them we are willing to discuss terms." "I have been trying, Master. They are not responding to our hails." On the bridge of the Busan Rising, Sunwoo looked up from his station. "Sir, the Thankor are trying to open communications. They appear ready to negotiate." Admiral Dae-ho finally turned from the tactical display. His expression was cold as winter steel. "Are they withdrawing from Valari space?" "No, sir. They are maintaining position around their flagship. Then we have nothing to discuss. Continue the attack." Captain Taemin's voice came over the communication system. "Soul's Wrath is in position for another volley, Admiral. Target selection?" Dae-ho studied the enemy formation. The Thankor had grouped their remaining ships around their command vessel, presenting a smaller target area but also concentrating their forces. It was a defensive position that showed they were thinking about survival rather than victory. "Target their flagship, Captain. These reptiles need to learn what happens when they threaten innocent people in human space." "Human space, sir?" asked Lieutenant Minji. "Technically, this system is not part of Terran territory." Dae-ho's cold smile returned. "It is now, Lieutenant. The moment these bullies threatened defenseless civilians, this became our responsibility." The Soul's Wrath fired again. This time, the dreadnought targeted the massive Thankor flagship with everything it had. 12 kinetic projectiles raced across space, each one aimed at critical systems. The Thankor vessel's point defense systems tried to intercept the incoming rounds, but human targeting computers had already calculated the defensive fire patterns and adjusted accordingly. 8 projectiles struck home. The flagship staggered under the impact, its armor cracking and its power fluctuating. But the massive ship did not explode. Its thick hull and redundant systems kept it operational, though barely. Fleetmaster Veltak picked himself up from the deck of his bridge, purple blood trickling from a cut on his scaled forehead. Around him, his officers worked frantically to restore power and repair damage. Half his bridge stations were dark, and the ship's main guns were offline. "Master," gasped his communications officer, "the humans are demanding our immediate surrender." Veltak looked at the tactical display. His fleet of 15 ships had been reduced to 8 in less than an hour. The humans had not lost a single vessel. This was not a battle. It was an execution. "Open a channel," he said quietly. Admiral Dae-ho's image appeared on the Thankor bridge screen. The human looked exactly as he had before the battle began, calm, controlled, completely without emotion. Behind him, his officers continued their work with professional efficiency. "Fleetmaster Veltak," Dae-ho said. His voice was polite, but carried the tone of someone used to being obeyed. "I believe you wanted to discuss terms." Veltak straightened as much as his injured body would allow. "Admiral, we are prepared to withdraw from this system if you will guarantee safe passage for our remaining ships." "No." The single word hit Veltak like a physical blow. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean you will surrender unconditionally, or I will continue to destroy your ships one by one until none remain. You came here to slaughter innocent civilians. The time for negotiation ended when you fired on defenseless people. Veltok's yellow eyes blazed with anger. You cannot treat the Thankor Empire this way. We have rights under galactic law. Galactic law? Daeho's expression did not change, but his voice took on a dangerous edge. Did you follow galactic law when you attacked this peaceful world? Did you consider the rights of the Valari when you began murdering them? On the surface of Valari Prime, Reef Singer and his council listened to the exchange through their communication systems. The human admiral's words were spoken calmly, but they carried a weight that made the water around the Valari council chamber seem to grow cold. He speaks of law and rights, whispered one of the younger council members. But his voice, there is something terrible in it. Reef Singer nodded slowly. These humans are not like other galactic species. They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for principle. Back in space, the standoff continued. Fleetmaster Veltak realized he was facing something he had never encountered before, an enemy that could not be intimidated, bribed, or reasoned with. The humans had decided his fleet was guilty, and they intended to carry out the sentence. Very well, Veltok said finally. What are your terms for surrender? All Thankor personnel will be transferred to designated prisoner ships. Your vessels will be seized as compensation for Valari losses. Your crews will be tried for war crimes against civilian populations. Veltak's scales paled to almost white. War crimes? But we are soldiers! This is how wars are fought. Not anymore, Daeho replied. Not in human space. Commander Ye-Jin stepped closer to her admiral and spoke quietly. Sir, we are receiving reports from Captain Yoon-suk. Her Marines are ready to begin boarding operations. Daeho nodded. Fleetmaster, you have 60 seconds to signal your surrender. If you do not, my boarding teams will take your ships by force. I should warn you that human Marines are considerably less pleasant to deal with than human naval officers. On the Thankor flagship, the bridge crew looked at their commander with frightened eyes. They had all heard stories about human ground forces, though most had dismissed them as exaggerations. Now, facing the reality of human naval power, those stories seemed much more believable. Master, the tactical officer said quietly, our remaining ships are reporting critical damage. We cannot continue fighting. Veltok closed his eyes. His empire had built its reputation on overwhelming force against weak opponents. They had never learned to fight against equals, much less against predators from a death world. Signal the fleet, he said finally. All ships stand down. We surrender. Admiral Daeho watched as the Thankor vessels powered down their weapons and dropped their shields. Around the bridge of the Busan Rising, his officers began preparing for the next phase of operations. Captain Yoon-suk, begin boarding operations. I want all Thankor personnel secured within 4 hours. Understood, Admiral. My Marines are launching now. Daeho turned to Sun Woo. Open a channel to the Valari surface. I suppose we should introduce ourselves properly. The image of Reef Singer appeared on the main screen. The alien looked fragile and beautiful, like a creature made of living water. His large eyes showed a mixture of gratitude and fear. I am Elder Reef Singer of the Valari Council, he said in his musical voice. We thank you for your assistance, Admiral. Your actions have saved our people from extinction. Daeho inclined his head slightly. I am Admiral Daeho of the Terran Defense Force. We received your distress call and responded appropriately. May we ask, what will happen now? Will you be leaving our system? Daeho's cold smile returned. Oh no, Elder Reef Singer, we are just getting started. The boarding shuttles launched from the human ships like a swarm of metal insects. Captain Yoon Suk watched from the bridge of the Gwangju's Hammer as her Marines prepared to secure the Thankor vessels. She had fought in 12 campaigns across human space, but this was different. This time they were not defending Earth colonies. They were projecting power across the galaxy itself. "Ma'am, boarding team's report ready," said her first officer, Lieutenant Hyun-woo. The young man had earned his rank in the brutal fighting against hegemony forces, where human soldiers had learned to fight in every environment from asteroid mines to gas giant atmospheres. "Proceed with operations," Eun-suk ordered. "Remind the teams that we need prisoners for intelligence purposes. Dead Thankor cannot answer questions." On the bridge of the Busan Rising, Admiral Daeho monitored the boarding operations while simultaneously coordinating with his other ship commanders. The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. Destroying an enemy fleet was simple. Managing the aftermath required careful planning. "Admiral," reported Commander Ye-jin, "preliminary scans of the Thankor vessels show interesting technology. Their ships are crude but effective, designed for intimidating civilian populations rather than military engagement." Daeho nodded. As expected, bullies rarely prepare for real fights. He turned to Lieutenant Minji. "What about their computer systems? Can we access their navigation data?" "Working on it, sir. Engineer Jae-wook believes he can crack their encryption within a few hours. These Thankor are not very sophisticated when it comes to information security." Deep in the flagship Seoul's Wrath, Marine Sergeant Dong-soo led his squad through the corridors of the captured Thankor command ship. The reptilian crew had surrendered, but years of experience had taught human Marines never to trust enemy capitulation. "Completely. Steady advance," Dong-soo whispered into his comm unit. "Watch for booby traps or suicide attacks. These lizards might decide to take some of us with them." The Thankor corridors were larger than human standard, designed for 7-foot reptilian warriors. But size had not helped them when faced with human boarding tactics. The Marines moved in small teams, covering each other and advancing with methodical precision. They had trained for this in the zero-gravity combat simulators of Luna Base, where failure meant death in the cold vacuum of space. Fleet Master Veltok sat in his command chair, hands bound with human restraints. Around him, his surviving officers watched in fascination and horror as human soldiers secured their ship. These mammals were smaller than Thankor warriors, but they moved with deadly efficiency. "How did they do it?" whispered his tactical officer. "Our fleet was 3 times larger than theirs." Veltok shook his head slowly. "Size means nothing if you do not know how to use it. These humans, they fight like they were born for war." Lieutenant Hyun-woo approached the Thankor bridge, his squad covering every entrance. He was young for a boarding team leader, but he had learned human military doctrine from the best teachers in the galaxy. The Hegemony War had been a harsh school, but it had produced the finest soldiers humanity had ever fielded. "Fleet Master Veltok," Hyun-woo said politely. "I am Lieutenant Hyun-woo of the Terran Defense Force. You and your crew are now prisoners of war under the jurisdiction of Earth Military Authority." Veltok looked up at the human officer. These mammals were strange. They spoke of war and death with the same calm tone others used to discuss the weather. "What will happen to us?" "That depends on your cooperation, Fleet Master. My admiral has questions about Thankor military operations. The more helpful you are, the better your treatment will be. On the surface of Valari Prime, Elder Reef Singer floated in his council chamber, trying to understand what had just happened. In less than 4 hours, the human fleet had destroyed or captured the entire Thankor invasion force. No casualties had been reported among the human ships. "Elder," said his communications officer, "the human admiral is requesting permission to establish orbital stations around our world." Reef Singer's large eyes widened. "Orbital stations? For what purpose?" "He says it is for our protection, Elder, to prevent future attacks like the one we just experienced." The Elder considered this carefully. The humans had saved his people from certain extinction, but their methods had been terrifying to watch. They fought without emotion, without hesitation, and without mercy for their enemies. Now they wanted to build military bases in Valari space. "Tell the Admiral we would be honored to meet with him in person," Reef Singer decided. "Perhaps we can better understand each other's intentions." Back on the Busan Rising, Admiral Dae-ho reviewed the intelligence reports flowing in from the captured Thankor ships. The picture they painted was both better and worse than he had expected. "Sir," reported Minji, "we have accessed their navigation computers. The Thankor Empire controls 47 star systems, all conquered within the last 50 years. They appear to be expanding rapidly through this sector of the galaxy." "Interesting. What about their military strength?" "Surprisingly weak, Admiral. They rely on intimidation rather than actual fighting power. Most of their targets surrendered without resistance once they saw the size of Thankor ships." Dae-ho nodded thoughtfully. "So they have been growing strong by feeding on the weak. That explains their poor performance against real opposition." Engineer Jae Wook stepped forward with a data pad in his hands. "Sir, we have discovered something important. The Thankor have detailed files on dozens of other peaceful civilizations in this region. It appears they were planning a massive expansion campaign." "Show me." The main screen filled with star charts showing Thankor expansion plans. Red lines indicated planned invasion routes, while blue dots marked peaceful worlds targeted for conquest. There were hundreds of them. Ocean worlds like Valari Prime, garden worlds full of artists and philosophers, research stations where scientists studied the mysteries of the universe. "My God," whispered Commander Ye Jin. "They were planning to conquer half the local galaxy." Dae-ho studied the charts with cold calculation. "Not anymore, they are not." He turned to his communications officer. "Sunwoo, prepare a message for transmission to Earth Command. Tell them we need reinforcements." "How many ships, sir?" "All of them." On the captured Thankor flagship, Lieutenant Yunwoo interrogated Fleet Master Veltak in what had been the ship's conference room. The reptilian commander sat across from the young human officer, still trying to understand how his superior force had been defeated so easily. "Your empire has been expanding for 50 years, Yunwoo said, reading from a datapad. "Always against civilizations that could not fight back. Did you never consider that someone might eventually resist?" Veltak's yellow eyes glared at his captor. "Resistance is futile against superior force. The strong rule the weak. This is the way of the universe." "Perhaps in your universe," Hyunwoo replied calmly. "But humans see things differently. We believe the strong should protect the weak, not prey upon them." "Pretty words, mammal. But you conquered our fleet just as we conquered others. How are you different?" Hyunwoo smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "The difference, Fleet Master, is that we conquer those who deserve to be conquered. You attacked innocent civilians. We attacked you. That makes us very different, indeed." Captain Sora paced the bridge of her destroyer, the Inchin's Edge, as her crew conducted detailed scans of the Valari system. Her ship was designed for reconnaissance and rapid strike missions, perfect for gathering intelligence on potential threats. "Captain," reported her sensor officer, "we are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures throughout the local sector. It appears news of our battle is spreading quickly." "Expected," Sora said. "A fleet the size of the Thankor force does not disappear without other powers taking notice. Any idea who is watching?" "Several different species, ma'am. Some appear to be military scouts, others might be merchants or refugees. Word is getting out that something major has happened here." Sora nodded. In galactic politics, information was often more valuable than weapons. Every species in the region would want to know who these humans were and what their intentions might be. On Valari Prime, preparations were underway for the first official meeting between human and Valari representatives. Elder Reef Singer had chosen the Grand Assembly Chamber, a beautiful underwater dome where the most important decisions in Valari history had been made. "Elder," said his cultural advisor, "what do we know about human diplomatic customs?" Reef Singer considered the question carefully. "Very little. But I suspect these humans are not like other galactic species. They do not seem interested in negotiation or compromise. They appear to make decisions and then enforce them." "That could be dangerous for our independence, Elder." "Perhaps," Reef Singer agreed. "But it could also be the greatest protection we have ever known. These humans destroyed a Thankor fleet without losing a single ship. Having them as allies might be worth any price." Admiral Deho prepared for his meeting with the Valari leadership, but his mind was already moving beyond this single system. The intelligence. 3 days after the battle, the interrogation rooms aboard the human ships buzzed with activity. Lieutenant Hyun-woo sat across from another Thankor officer, a ship captain who had commanded one of the destroyed cruisers. The reptilian's scales had turned a pale gray color that human intelligence officers had learned indicated extreme fear. "Captain Thokmar," Hyun-woo said quietly, reading from his datapad, "your ship was responsible for the orbital bombardment of civilian targets. On Kalani 7th, 17 million people died in that attack." The Thankor captain shifted uncomfortably in his restraints. They were enemy populations. Conquest requires the elimination of resistance." "Resistance?" Hyun-woo looked up from his notes. Kalani 7th was a research colony. They had no weapons, no military, no defenses at all. They were studying plant genetics to help feed hungry worlds. "All enemy populations are dangerous if left alive," Thokmar insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. "This is the Thankor way." Hyun-woo set down his datapad and leaned forward. "Captain, do you know what we discovered when we analyzed your ship's computer files?" The Thankor's yellow eyes widened with fear. "What do you mean?" "We found personal messages, videos your crew recorded during the attack on Kalani 7. They were laughing, Captain, laughing as they murdered families who were trying to surrender." Thokmar said nothing, but his scales continued to pale. "One of your officers recorded himself taking trophies from the bodies of children," Hyun-woo continued, his voice never changing tone. "Human children, Captain. Do you know what humans do to creatures who hurt our young?" In another interrogation room aboard the Soul's Wrath, Captain Taemin personally questioned Fleet Master Veltok. The dreadnought captain was known for his patience and thoroughness, qualities that made him excellent at extracting information from reluctant prisoners. "You have been very helpful so far," Taemin said, reviewing the star charts spread across the table between them. This information about Thankor forward bases will save many lives. Veltok looked up with hollow eyes. Why do you care about alien lives? We are not the same species. Natural law says the strong should dominate the weak. Taemin considered the question seriously. You know, Fleet Master, humans used to think the same way. For thousands of years, we fought each other constantly, tribe against tribe, nation against nation, ideology against ideology. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times. Then how are you different now? We learned that strength without purpose is just destruction. Real strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Taemin pointed to the star charts. Tell me about the slave markets on Gorvak Prime. Veltok's remaining. Defiance crumbled. The markets, they are where we sell captured populations. Scientists, artists, teachers. They bring good prices from species that value such things. How many beings are currently held there? Perhaps 2 million. From dozens of different worlds. Taemin made a note on his data pad. 2 million slaves. And the Thankor. See nothing wrong with this? They are property now. Spoils of conquest. I see. Taemin stood up slowly. Fleet Master, I want you to understand something. Every piece of information you have given us today will be used to hunt down and destroy. Every Thankor base, every slave market, every ship in your empire. Your cooperation is not saving your people. It is ensuring their complete defeat. Veltok stared at him in shock. Then why are you asking for information? Because this way, fewer innocent people will die when we do it. Taemin gathered his papers. We are going to dismantle your empire completely, Veltok. The only question is whether it takes months or years. On the bridge of the Busan Rising, Admiral Dae-ho received reports from all the interrogation teams. The picture emerging from Thankor intelligence was worse than anyone had imagined. The reptilian empire was not just expanding, it was conducting genocide on a galactic scale. Sir, reported Commander Ye-jin, we now have confirmed locations for 37 Thankor military bases, 12 slave markets, and over 100 conquered worlds. Conservative estimates suggest they have killed or enslaved more than 2 billion intelligent beings. Dae-ho absorbed this information without visible emotion, but everyone on the bridge could feel the temperature in the room seem to drop. What? About their home world? Thankor Prime is heavily fortified, orbital defense platforms, a large fleet, and surface-to-space missile systems. Intelligence suggests a population of 8 billion Thankor civilians. Civilians. Dae-ho spoke the word like it tasted bitter in his mouth. Do we have any evidence of Thankor civilian resistance to their military's actions? Minji looked up from her analysis station. No, sir. In fact, the evidence suggests widespread civilian support for military expansion. Thankor culture appears to celebrate conquest and the enslavement of other species. I see. Dae-ho walked to the main view screen, which showed Valari Prime floating peacefully below. Commander Ye-jin, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need to speak with the World Council immediately. On the surface of Valari Prime, Elder Reef Singer prepared for his first face-to-face meeting with the human admiral, the Grand. Assembly chamber had been filled with water suitable for both Valari and air-breathing visitors, with transparent breathing apparatus provided for the humans. Elder, said his cultural advisor, what do we know about human negotiation styles? Very little, Reef Singer admitted. But I suspect they do not negotiate the way other galactic species do. These humans seem to make decisions based on principles rather than pure self-interest. The human shuttle arrived precisely on schedule, landing on the floating platform outside the assembly chamber. Admiral Dayho emerged wearing a dress uniform that was simple but clearly military in nature. He was accompanied by two officers, Commander Ye Jin and Lieutenant Min Ji. "Elder Reefsinger," Dayho said with a slight bow, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "Admiral, it is we who should be thanking you. Your actions saved our entire civilization." Dayho's expression remained neutral. "Perhaps. But salvation often comes with a price, Elder. We need to discuss the future of this system." They moved into the assembly chamber, where Reefsinger floated in the center while the humans stood on a transparent platform that allowed them to breathe normally while still being surrounded by water. It was beautiful and strange, like a meeting between creatures from different universes. "Admiral," Reefsinger began, "we understand that you wish to establish orbital stations around our world. We are prepared to grant permission for this as a gesture of gratitude. I appreciate that, Elder, but you misunderstand the situation." Dayho's voice was calm but firm. "We are not requesting permission. We are informing you of our intentions." The water around Reefsinger seemed to grow cold. I do not understand." "Elder, your people sent a distress call that was received by Earth. By responding to that call, we have accepted responsibility for your protection. That means this system is now under human jurisdiction." Commander Yejin stepped forward with a data pad. "We have analyzed the strategic value of Valari Prime. Your world is located at a critical hyperspace junction, making it an ideal base for operations against Thankor territory and other threats in this sector." Reefsinger felt his world tilting around him. Are you saying you are annexing our system?" "Not annexing," Dayho corrected. "Protecting. There is a difference, though I understand it may not seem that way from your perspective. But we are a peaceful people. We have no desire to be involved in galactic conflicts, and that is exactly why you need our protection," Lieutenant Min Ji said quietly. "The Thankor targeted you precisely because you were peaceful and defenseless. There are dozens of other predator species in this galaxy who will see your weakness the same way." Reefsinger looked around the chamber at his fellow council members, seeing fear and confusion in their large eyes. What exactly are you proposing?" Admiral Dayho pulled up a holographic display showing the Valari system with planned human installations. "We will establish orbital defense platforms, a naval base, and ground installations necessary for protecting your world. Your people will continue to govern themselves in all matters that do not affect system security." "And if we refuse?" Dayho's cold smile returned. "Elder, with respect, you do not have the capability to refuse. But I think you will find our protection beneficial. The alternative is to remain defenseless in a galaxy full of predators." Reefsinger felt the weight of inevitability settling over him like the deepest ocean currents. These humans had saved his people, but they had also made it clear that salvation came with permanent consequences. "Admiral," he said quietly, "may I ask what you intend to do about the Thankor Empire?" "We intend to destroy it completely," Dayho replied without hesitation. "Every base, every ship, every installation that was used to murder innocent people. The Thankor will learn what happens when a species chooses to become predators in human space." "Human space?" "This entire sector is now human space, Elder. We are not just protecting Valari Prime. We are establishing a zone of safety for all peaceful civilizations in this region. The age of predators is ending. 2 weeks after the meeting in the assembly chamber, human construction ships arrived in the Valari system. Elder Reef Singer watched from his underwater palace as massive vessels began assembling orbital platforms around his world. The humans worked with efficiency that bordered on the supernatural, turning empty space into fortified positions in a matter of days. "Elder," said his defense advisor, "the humans have completed 3 orbital defense platforms. Each one carries weapons, capable of destroying a capital ship with a single shot." Reef Singer nodded slowly. "And our own vessels? The humans have requested that we ground all Valari ships until they can be inspected for security purposes. They say it is temporary." But Reef Singer knew it was not temporary. Nothing the humans did was temporary. They built things to last forever, just like their promises and their threats. Captain Yoon-suk stood on the observation deck of the Gwangju's Hammer, watching her Marines establish the first human ground installation on Valari Prime. The base was being built on a floating island near the planetary capital, positioned to monitor all major Valari population centers while maintaining the appearance of being defensive rather than occupational. "Ma'am," reported Sergeant Dong-Su, "the Valari workers are very cooperative. They seem genuinely grateful for our presence." "They should be," Yoon-suk replied. "Without us, they would all be dead or enslaved by now." She turned to her communications officer. "Any word from the Valari Council about resource allocation?" "They have agreed to provide raw materials for our construction projects, as well as food and water for our personnel. In exchange, we are sharing some basic defensive technologies." Yoon-suk nodded. It was a fair trade as human trades went. The Valari would provide support for human military operations, and in return, they would receive protection from anyone who might threaten them. Of course, the biggest threat in their system was now the humans themselves, but that was beside the point. On the bridge of the Busan Rising, Admiral Dae-ho reviewed reports from across the expanding human sphere of influence. In the 3 weeks since the Thankor fleet's destruction, 17 different alien civilizations had contacted Earth requesting protection from various threats. Each request was being carefully evaluated. "Sir," reported Commander Ye-jin, "we have received another distress call. This one is from the Zephyrian Collective, approximately 40 light-years from here. They are being attacked by Thankor forces." Dae-ho looked up from his reports. "How large is the attacking force?" "Intelligence suggests a battle group of 8 ships, sir. Much smaller than what we faced here." "Excellent. Captain Sora can handle that with her destroyer squadron." Dae-ho made a note on his command pad. "What about the status of our supply lines?" Lieutenant Min-ji stepped forward with a data tablet. "All human installations in this sector are now connected by secure communication networks. Supply ships from Earth arrive every 72 hours. We are achieving full operational capability ahead of schedule." "Good. What about resistance?" "Some minor protests from the Galactic Trade Federation about our interference in established shipping routes. A few species have lodged formal complaints with the Galactic Council about human aggressive expansion." Dae-ho smiled coldly. "Let them complain. The Galactic Council had centuries to deal with predators like the Thankor. They chose to do nothing. Now someone who is willing to act has arrived. Deep in the underwater cities of Valari Prime, not everyone was happy with their new protectors. Counselor Wavedancer, one of the younger members of the Valari leadership, floated in a private chamber with several other dissidents. We have traded one master for another, Wave Dancer said bitterly. The humans may be more polite than the thanker, but they are still conquerors. At least we are alive, replied another counselor. The thanker would have killed us all. Would they? Or would some of us have survived as slaves? At least then we might have hoped for eventual freedom. An older counselor, Depth Seeker, shook his head sadly. You did not see the Thankor battle records, young one. They do not take prisoners from aquatic species. Our biology is too different for us to be useful slaves. They would have exterminated us completely. So we should be grateful to be human. Pets instead? We should be grateful to be alive, Depth Seeker said firmly. And we should be wise about how we respond to our situation. The humans are not cruel masters, if we are indeed their subjects. They allow us to govern ourselves, to practice our culture, to live in peace. That is more than most conquered peoples receive. On Earth, the World Council met in emergency session to discuss the rapidly expanding situation in the Outer Rim. President Park Kyung-hee, a veteran diplomat who had guided humanity through the hegemony wars, addressed the assembly from her chair in the United Nations building. Honored delegates, she began, we face an unprecedented situation. Admiral Daeho's operations have been more successful than anyone anticipated. We now have requests for protection from over 40 alien civilizations. Minister of Defense General Han Woo-jin stood to respond. Madam President, our military forces are stretched thin. We have deployed 3 full fleets to the Outer Rim, but the area of space we are being asked to patrol is larger than human territory itself. What does Admiral Daeho recommend? Accelerated expansion, Madam President. He believes we need to establish a permanent human presence throughout the sector to prevent future atrocities like the ones committed by the Thankor. President Park considered this carefully. The financial cost would be enormous. We would need to build shipyards, establish colonies, train thousands of new officers and crews. The moral cost of doing nothing may be higher, replied General Han. Intelligence reports suggest there are at least 12 different predator species operating in that region. If we do not act, millions of innocent beings will die. Back on Valari Prime, Elder Reef Singer met with Admiral Daeho for their weekly security briefing. The meetings had become routine, though the Elder still felt nervous in the presence of the human commander. Admiral, Reef Singer said, I have received reports that some of our young people are expressing interest in joining human military forces. Is this something you would consider? Daeho looked up from his reports with interest. Valari volunteers? What are their motivations? Gratitude, primarily. They see what you have done for our people, and they wish to help extend that protection to others. Also, I believe some of them are excited by the idea of leaving our ocean world to see the galaxy. Interesting. Valari physiology would make them excellent submarine crew members, and their natural grace in three-dimensional movement could be valuable in zero-gravity operations. Daeho made a note. We will consider volunteer applications on a case-by-case basis. Reef Singer felt a mixture of pride and sadness. His people were beginning to integrate with human civilization, which meant they were losing their isolation forever. But perhaps that was not entirely a bad thing. Admiral, may I ask about your long-term plans for this sector? Daeho set down his reports and looked directly at the Valari leader. We intend to create a zone of stability, Elder. No more predators, no more genocide, no more slavery. Every peaceful civilization will be protected, and every aggressive species will be neutralized. And what happens to species that fall somewhere between peaceful and aggressive? That depends on their choices, Daeho replied. We do not seek to control every aspect of alien civilization. We only insist on one rule. The strong will not prey upon the weak. Species that can accept that limitation will find us generous. Allies. Those that cannot will find us implacable enemies. Reefsinger nodded slowly. And if peaceful species begin to depend too heavily on human protection? What happens to our independence? Deho's expression softened slightly. Elder, independence is a luxury that requires strength to maintain. Your people are not strong in the military sense, but you have other strengths. Your culture, your knowledge, your perspectives, these things have value. We do not seek to destroy what makes you unique, but you do seek to control what makes us vulnerable. Yes, Deho admitted. The galaxy is not a safe place for the innocent. Until it becomes safer, someone must stand guard. Humans have accepted that responsibility. 3 months after the first battle, Captain Taemin stood on the bridge of his new command, the orbital fortress, Sol's Shield. The massive station had been built in record time, transforming Valari Prime from a defenseless world into one of the most heavily fortified systems in the galaxy. Sir, reported his communications officer, we are receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Deho. Taemin's image appeared on the main screen of the Busan Rising, now positioned at the edge of Thankor space. Captain, how is the integration of Valari personnel proceeding? Very well, Admiral. We now have 47 Valari serving aboard human vessels, and their performance has been exemplary. They seem to have a natural talent for three-dimensional thinking. Excellent. We may need to expand the volunteer program. Earth Command has approved Operation Clear Sweep, the systematic elimination of all Thankor military assets in this sector. Taemin nodded grimly. How many worlds are we talking about, sir? 47 confirmed Thankor bases, 12 slave markets, and their 6 months had passed since the first human ship arrived at Valari Prime, and the transformation was complete. What had once been an isolated ocean world was now the administrative center of the Human Protection Zone, a rapidly expanding region of space where Earth's rules applied and Earth's forces kept the peace. Admiral Deho stood in his new command center on Sol Station, a massive orbital facility that had been constructed above Valari Prime. Through the transparent walls of his office, he could see human and alien ships moving in carefully controlled patterns, part of a growing fleet that now numbered over 200 vessels, sir, reported Commander Yejin. The morning briefing is ready. Deho turned from the window and took his seat at the head of a conference table that had become the nerve center of human operations in the sector. Around the table sat his senior staff, now expanded to include specialists in alien psychology, xenobiology, and interspecies relations. What is our current status? Deho asked. Captain Taemin, now serving as Director of Orbital Defense, spoke first. All primary installations are complete and operational. We have defense platforms around 14 worlds with 3 more under construction. Enemy incursions have dropped to 0 in the protected zone. Excellent. Captain Sora, the destroyer. Captain had been promoted to Director of Mobile Operations. Our patrol squadrons report quiet sectors across the entire zone. We have responded to 6 distress calls this month, all minor piracy incidents. Average response time is under 4 hours. Lieutenant Min Ji, now elevated to Director of Intelligence, presented her report next. Thankor military capacity has been reduced by approximately 60%. They have withdrawn their remaining forces to their core systems and appear to be adopting a defensive posture. Good. And civilian cooperation? Excellent across all species, sir. We now have volunteers from 12 different civilizations serving in support roles. The integration programs are working better than projected. Deho nodded with satisfaction. The Human Protection Zone was functioning exactly as planned, a region of space where peaceful civilizations could develop without fear of predators under the watchful protection of Earth's military forces. On Valari Prime below, Elder Reef Singer swam through the halls of his underwater palace, reviewing reports from across his world. The changes brought by human protection had been profound, and mostly positive. Valari scientists were now working on joint research projects with human universities. Valari artists were sharing their work with alien species they had never known existed. Valari youth were traveling to other worlds as part of cultural exchange programs, but there was a price for all this progress. Elder, said his communications, Officer, we have received another request from the humans. They want to establish a submarine base in the Deep Reach Trench. Reef Singer paused in his swimming. The Deep Reach Trench was the most sacred site in Valari culture, where their most ancient ancestors had first developed sentience in the crushing depths. What is their stated purpose? Anti-submarine warfare training, Elder. They say it will help them protect other ocean worlds more effectively. Another request that was not really a request. Another step in the gradual integration of Valari Prime into the human military machine. Reef Singer had learned to recognize the pattern. The humans would explain their needs, provide logical justifications, and then implement their plans regardless of Valari concerns. Tell them we agree, Reef Singer said quietly, but request that they include Valari observers in their training programs. It was a small victory, but Reef Singer had learned to treasure small victories. They were all his people had left. In the Intelligence Center of Sol Station, Lieutenant Minji reviewed reports from across the galaxy. The success of the Human Protection Zone had not gone unnoticed by other powers, and the responses were mixed. Director, said her aide, we have received formal protests from the Galactic Trade Federation about our shipping restrictions. Minji looked up from her analysis screens. What specifically are they complaining about? Our requirement that all vessels transiting the protection zone submit to inspection. They claim it is disrupting established trade routes and violating freedom of navigation principles. And their proposed solution? They want us to establish neutral corridors where their ships can pass without inspection. Minji smiled coldly. Neutral corridors would also allow smugglers, pirates, and slave traders to move freely through our territory. Inform the Federation that security requirements are non-negotiable. The aide made a note and continued. We also have a diplomatic request from the Hegemony Remnant. They want to establish formal relations with the Human Protection Zone. This was more interesting. The hegemony had been humanity's primary enemy before the expansion into the Outer Rim. Their request for diplomatic contact suggested they saw the protection zone as a legitimate political entity, not just a temporary military occupation. Schedule a meeting with Admiral Deho, Minji decided. This could be significant. Captain Yun-suk walked through the marine training facility on Valari Prime, observing human and alien soldiers practicing together in the zero-gravity combat simulators. The integration program had been more successful than anyone had dared hope. Valari Marines moved through three-dimensional space with an intuitive grace that complemented human tactical thinking perfectly. "Ma'am," said Sergeant Dong-Su, "the Valari recruits are ready for their first space deployment." Yunsuk watched a young Valari Marine execute a perfect boarding maneuver, using her natural swimming motions to navigate through a simulated spacecraft corridor in zero gravity. What is their psychological profile? Excellent, ma'am. They show high motivation, strong team cohesion, and genuine commitment to protection zone principles. No signs of divided loyalty or reluctance to engage hostile forces. Good. The Crystalline. Collective has requested Marine support for their expedition to the Outer Spiral. Valari Marines might be perfect for that mission. As she spoke, Yunsuk realized she was planning military operations using alien soldiers to protect other alien civilizations. The human protection zone had evolved beyond a simple defensive alliance into something unprecedented in galactic history. A multi-species military organization united by human leadership and human values. In his private office aboard Sol Station, Admiral Deho met with a delegation from the Galactic Council. The three aliens represented the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, and their presence here was a clear sign that human expansion had reached the attention of the highest levels of galactic politics. "Admiral," said Counselor, Threshka, a tall insectoid being with compound eyes that reflected the light like jewels. "The Council wishes to discuss the situation in this sector." Deho gestured for his guests to be seated. "I am always happy to discuss matters of mutual interest, Counselor. The rapid expansion of human influence has caused considerable concern among our member species. Some feel that Earth is pursuing an aggressive expansion policy that threatens galactic stability. And others? Counselor Vex Null, a crystalline being whose body chimed softly when he moved, spoke next. Others point out that this sector has been more peaceful in the last 6 months than it has been in over a century. The elimination of piracy, slavery, and military aggression has benefited everyone. An interesting dichotomy, Deho observed. Do you have a specific proposal, counselors? The third delegate, Matriarch Sylvan of the Aquatic Republics, leaned forward. The Council proposes formal recognition of the Human Protection Zone as a sovereign political entity with guaranteed territorial boundaries and mutual defense agreements. Deho considered this carefully. Official recognition would legitimize human expansion, but it would also place limits on future growth. What would be the territorial boundaries? Current human-controlled space, plus a buffer zone of approximately 50 light-years, Threshka replied. In exchange, Earth would agree not to expand beyond those boundaries without Council approval. And in return, full diplomatic recognition, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts with all Council species. It was a generous offer, and Deho knew it. The Galactic Council was essentially offering to legitimize human conquest in exchange for stability. But there was one problem with their proposal. Counselors, Deho said quietly, your offer assumes that human expansion is motivated by territorial ambition. That is not the case. Then what is your motivation? Asked Vex Null. Justice. Deho stood and walked to the window overlooking Valari Prime. When we received that first distress call, we did not respond because we wanted territory. We responded because innocent people were being murdered. That principle has not changed. But surely you understand that unlimited expansion is unsustainable, Matriarch Sylvan protested. Even human resources have limits. Perhaps, Deho agreed, but evil also has limits. Every predator species we eliminate, every slave market, we destroy every pirate base we capture. These actions make the galaxy safer for everyone. When we have eliminated all the predators, then we can discuss territorial boundaries. 1 year after the first distress call from Valari Prime, Admiral Day-Ho stood before the assembled representatives of 47 different species in the Grand Assembly Hall of Sol Station. The massive chamber had been designed to accommodate the diverse biological needs of dozens of alien civilizations, with sections for aquatic species like the Valari, crystalline beings like the Collective, and gas phase entities from the Nebula Kingdoms. Honored representatives, Day-Ho began, his voice carried by translation systems to every being in the chamber. We gather today to formalize what has already become reality: the establishment of the Terran Protection Doctrine as the governing principle of this region of space. At his side stood Commander Ye Jin, now bearing the rank of Admiral herself and serving as Director of Interspecies Affairs. Behind them, the flags of every protected world hung in a display that would have been impossible to imagine just 1 year ago. The doctrine is simple, Day-Ho continued. Every sentient species has the right to exist without fear of extinction. Every thinking being has the right to freedom from slavery. Every civilization has the right to develop according to its own nature, provided that development does not threaten other civilizations. Elder Reef Singer floated in the aquatic section of the chamber, listening to words that would reshape the galaxy. Around him, representatives of species that had been enemies for millennia now sat in peace, united by their common protection under human authority. To enforce these rights, Day-Ho said, Earth commits to maintaining sufficient military, force to deter any threat to protected worlds. We will respond to any distress call from any peaceful civilization anywhere in the galaxy, regardless of distance or cost. The implications of that statement rippled through the assembly like a shockwave. Anywhere in the galaxy. It was a promise, so vast that even the ancient Galactic Council had never dared make it. Ambassador Chen Wei, Earth's diplomatic representative to the galaxy, stepped forward. The protection doctrine will be enforced through a combination of human naval forces and allied defense fleets. Every protected species will contribute according to their capabilities. Some will provide ships, others will offer technology, and still others will supply logistical support. In return, Admiral Ye Jin added, protected worlds will enjoy free trade throughout the protection zone, shared scientific research, cultural exchange programs, and guaranteed territorial integrity. Counselor Threshkaw of the Galactic Council rose from his seat. Admiral Day-Ho, the Council has reviewed your proposal. While we appreciate the enthusiasm behind your efforts, we must point out that what you are proposing amounts to the militarization of half the galaxy. Day-Ho's expression remained calm. Counselor, the galaxy was already militarized. The difference is that now the military power serves to protect the innocent rather than prey upon them. But who will protect the galaxy from you? Asked Matriarch Sylvan. You ask us to trust that human moral principles will remain constant. What happens when Earth decides that certain species are too dangerous to be allowed independence? A fair question, Day-Ho acknowledged. The answer is that we will be watched and judged by those we protect. The moment we become the predators we once fought, our mandate will end. Captain Taemin, now Admiral Taemin, and commander of the EI Terran Defense Fleet, stood to address the assembly. Distinguished delegates, I have served in 23 combat operations across this sector. In every case, we have encountered species that were being oppressed, enslaved, or exterminated by stronger neighbors. The protection doctrine does not create new conflicts. It resolves existing ones permanently. A new voice spoke from the environmental section designed for silicon-based life forms. Processor Prime Zenth 99 of the Machine Confederacy had never spoken in public before, making his words all the more significant. Query: what protocols exist for species that refuse protection? The artificial being asked in its synthesized voice. Admiral Yejin fielded this question. Refusal of protection is always accepted, provided the refusing species does not threaten others. However, such species forfeit any claim to assistance if they are later attacked. Clarification: what constitutes threatening behavior under the protection doctrine? Acts of aggression against protected worlds, slavery, genocide, or the systematic oppression of subject populations, Yejin replied. Species that engage in such behavior will be given one opportunity to change their policies. If they refuse, they will be treated as hostile entities. Processor Prime Zenth 99's optical sensors flashed as he processed this information. Conclusion: the Machine Confederacy finds these terms acceptable. We formally request inclusion in the protection zone. The request sent another wave of surprise through the assembly. The Machine Confederacy was one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, possessing technology that rivaled anything Earth had developed. Their inclusion would make the protection zone a truly galactic power. Request acknowledged, Deho replied. The Machine Confederacy will be welcomed as a full partner in the protection zone. As the formal ceremony continued, Captain Sora stood in the command center, monitoring incoming communications from across the galaxy. Her promotion to Admiral of Rapid Response Forces had come with the responsibility of coordinating human reaction to threats anywhere in known space. Admiral, reported her communications officer. We have 3 new distress calls. The Harmony worlds are under attack by hegemony remnant forces. The Spiral colonies report increased piracy, and we have an unconfirmed report of a slave raid in the Outer Rim. Sora studied the tactical display showing human fleet positions across half the galaxy. Dispatch Task Force 7 to the Harmony worlds, redirect the patrol squadron at Beta Centauri to the Spiral colonies, and send the Marine Expeditionary Force to investigate the slave raid. Ma'am, that will leave us with minimal reserves. Then we had better hope nothing else goes wrong today. It was a constant challenge. The protection zone had grown so large that human forces were stretched thin despite massive expansion of the fleet. Every new world that joined the alliance increased the territory that needed to be defended. Captain Yoon Suk, now serving as Director of Marine Operations, received regular reports from human forces scattered across dozens of worlds. The integration of alien auxiliaries had been so successful that human Marines now routinely served alongside Valari swimmers, crystalline specialists, and even Machine Confederacy combat units. Director, reported Sergeant Dong Su, the joint training exercise on Kepler 442b has concluded. Human Valari Marine teams achieved a 97% success rate in boarding operations. Excellent. What about the new Zephyrian volunteers? They show promise in atmospheric operations, ma'am. Their flight capabilities give them advantages in low-gravity environments that complement human equipment perfectly. Yoon-suk nodded with satisfaction. The protection zone was becoming more than just human military power extended across space. It was evolving into a genuine multi-species civilization united by common values and mutual defense. Back in the assembly hall, the formal adoption of the protection doctrine was reaching its climax. Admiral Day-Ho prepared to deliver the closing statement that would establish the new order permanently. 1 year ago, he began, the Valari people sent a simple message into space. They asked for help. They received something they did not expect, not just rescue, but transformation. Today we formalize that transformation on a galactic scale. He paused, looking out at the representatives of dozens of species, many of whom had been mortal enemies, before human intervention brought them together. The Terran Protection Doctrine is not just a military alliance or a political agreement. It is a declaration that the age of predators is ending. No longer will the strong prey upon the weak simply because they can. No longer will innocent civilizations live in fear of extinction. No longer will slavery and genocide be tolerated as natural aspects of galactic life. Elder Reef Singer found himself moved despite his reservations about human dominance. Whatever the cost of their protection, these humans had delivered on every promise they had made. The galaxy is vast, Day-Ho continued, and there are many species we have not yet encountered. Some will be peaceful, and they will be welcomed into the protection zone with open arms. Others will be predators, and they will learn what happens when predators encounter apex predators from a death world. The phrase death world rippled through the assembly as translation systems converted it into dozens of languages. Many species had heard rumors about Earth's classification, but few truly understood what it meant to evolve on a planet that had tried to kill its inhabitants for millions of years. Earth is classified as a class tostus death world, Day-Ho explained. For most species, simply landing on our planet would be fatal. We evolved in an environment of constant danger where survival required intelligence, cooperation, and the ability to fight against impossible odds. These traits served us well in our expansion to the stars, and they serve us well in our role as galactic protectors. He gestured to the assembled representatives. You called out for help, and help came. But it came in the form that Earth provides, not gentle mercy, but effective action, not charity, but partnership, not rescue, but